Welcome to Scoli Sleep Stories. Before we begin, take a moment to get comfortable. Let the day soften around you and settle in for a calm documentary made for curious minds. If these stories help you rest, learn, or simply enjoy a quieter part of the day, please consider liking this episode and subscribing to the channel. Now, when you are ready, let us begin. Chapter 1: Arrival over the Mediterranean. From a distance, Malta appears quietly, as if the sea has been holding it in the blue palm of its hand. The Mediterranean stretches wide in every direction, a deep, gentle blue between southern Europe, North Africa, and Western Asia. This sea has carried sailors, merchants, pilgrims, fishermen, and travelers for thousands of years. Its waters have joined many shores, and Malta rests near its center, small in size, but rich in memory. As the islands come into view, they seem pale and warm against the water. The sunlight gathers on the land in soft tones of cream, gold, and sand. Much of this color comes from limestone, a pale rock formed long ago from layers of ancient marine life. Limestone is often used for building in Malta, and over time it has given many towns and villages their honey-colored glow. The country of Malta is an archipelago, which means a group of islands. The Maltese archipelago includes the main island of Malta, the island of Gozo, the smaller island of Comino, and several little uninhabited islets scattered nearby. Altogether, the country covers about 316 square kilometers, making it one of the smallest states in Europe. Yet from above, it does not feel small in meaning. It feels carefully placed, like a set of stones in a wide sea. To the north, beyond the horizon, lies Sicily, roughly 93 kilometers away. Farther south are the coasts of North Africa. Between them, Malta has long stood along important sea routes. Its position helped shape its history, not in one simple way, but through many arrivals and departures. Over centuries, different peoples came to these shores: prehistoric builders, Phoenicians, Carthaginians, Romans, Byzantines, Arabs, Normans, the Knights of St. John, the French, the British, and others. Each left traces, some in stone, some in language, some in daily life. But at first, from the air, or from the deck of a slowly approaching boat, the history is quiet. What you see is the outline of the islands, low and rocky, surrounded by blue. The largest island is Malta itself. It holds the capital city, Valletta, and many towns that seem to run together across the landscape in pale bands of stone. From above, the streets make soft patterns. Flat roofs catch the light. Church domes rise here and there. Roads thread between neighborhoods, fields, and harbors. The land is compact, so the countryside and the towns are never very far apart. Northwest of Malta lies Gozo, smaller and often more rural in feeling. Its Maltese name is Gaudex. From a distance, Gozo has a gentler, more open look, with terraced fields, low hills, and villages gathered around churches. Terraced fields are stepped fields built into slopes, and on Gozo these terraces make soft lines across the earth, held in place by stone walls. Between Malta and Gozo is Comino, a small island known for clear waters and the famous Blue Lagoon. From above, Comino looks sparse and sunlit, with rocky paths, low vegetation, and coves along the shore. A cove is a small sheltered bay, a place where the sea draws close to the land in a curved embrace. Around all the islands, the coastline changes slowly from cliffs to bays, from harbors to narrow inlets. Malta has no permanent rivers and no large natural lakes. Rain falls more in the cooler months, and the land can be greener in winter and spring, drier and more golden in summer. The islands hold water carefully, and the landscape reflects this. Low shrubs, cultivated fields, stone boundaries, and towns built close together. As you descend, the sea shows silver reflections. Light moves across the surface in long, quiet strokes. A boat wake may draw a white line behind a ferry. Near the shore, the blue becomes lighter, then turquoise, then clear over rock and sand. The water gathers in small harbors where boats rest, and in deep natural inlets where ships have anchored for generations. The main island grows clearer. You can see pale walls dividing fields like fine threads laid across the land. Some are dry stone walls, made without mortar, stone resting carefully upon stone. They mark boundaries, protect soil, and soften the wind. They are part of the island's patient order. The towns come closer too. Their buildings are often made from local limestone, cut into blocks that mellow with age. Roof lines are mostly low and flat. Streets seem narrow from above, offering shade between walls. In many places, wooden balconies project from the facades, their painted sides casting small shadows. The architecture has its own rhythm, practical, bright, and shaped by sun, sea air, and history. Malta's official languages are Maltese and English. Maltese is especially distinctive. It is a Semitic language written in the Latin alphabet, the same alphabet used for English. Over time, it has gathered many influences from Italian, Sicilian, and English. Even in the sound of place names, Malta carries its layers. Some names feel ancient, some Mediterranean, some shaped by later centuries, all belonging now to the island's living speech. The approach continues gently. Perhaps you arrive by air, the plane lowering slowly over the water, the wing catching a soft glint of light, or perhaps you arrive by sea, with the islands rising little by little from the horizon. Either way, Malta does not need to announce itself loudly. It reveals itself through color and shape. Blue water, pale stone, rocky edges, sheltered harbors. The Mediterranean around it feels spacious. The islands feel close and detailed. This contrast is part of Malta's quiet character. A small country surrounded by a large sea, a compact landscape holding many eras side by side, a place where a short journey can pass from prehistoric stones to medieval walls, from fishing villages to fortified harbors, from open cliffs to shaded city streets. As the view narrows, the eastern side of the main island comes into focus. Here the coastline folds into great harbors. Walls and bastions appear along the water. A bastion is a strong projecting part of a fort wall, built long ago for defense. On one peninsula set between two harbors lies Valletta, Malta's capital. The city is still distant at first, a pale shape of straight streets and fortified edges. Then the first light touches its walls. The limestone warms from cream to gold. The sea below turns softly blue, and the journey begins to settle toward Valletta, where the morning waits among quiet streets, wooden balconies, and honey-colored stone. Chapter 2. Valletta at First Light. At first light, Valletta seems to rise gently from the pale stone of its peninsula, as if the city and the rock beneath it have always belonged to one another. The morning arrives softly over Malta's capital. It touches the upper edges of church domes, the flat roofs, the carved balconies, and the long rows of honey-colored facades. The limestone, still cool from the night, begins to glow with a quiet warmth. In the narrow streets, shutters open one by one. A chair is set outside a doorway. Somewhere, a cup is placed on a small table. The city is waking, not hurriedly, but steadily. Valletta stands on the Chabaris Peninsula, a narrow ridge of land between two harbors. On one side lies the Grand Harbor, deep and sheltered, with centuries of ships and stories held in its blue water. On the other side is Marsamexit Harbor, calmer in feeling, with boats resting near the shore and towns looking back across the water. From many of Valletta's streets, the land slopes downward, and at the far end, there is often a sudden glimpse of sea, bright and blue between stone walls. The city was founded in 1566, after the Great Siege of 1565, an important turning point in Malta's history. It was named for Jean Parisot de Vallette, the Grand Master of the Knights of St. John. The knights were also known as the Knights Hospitaller, or the Order of St. John. They had come to Malta in the 16th century, and after the siege, they began building a new fortified city on this high peninsula. Fortified means protected by strong defenses. Valletta was designed with walls, gates, and bastions. A bastion is a part of a fort wall that projects outward, allowing defenders to see and protect the surrounding area. Here, these bastions are not only historical structures, they also shape the way the city feels. They lift Valletta above the harbors, giving it terraces of stone, open views, and a sense of being carefully held between sea and sky. Unlike older towns that grew slowly in winding patterns, Valletta was planned. It was created as a Renaissance city, with straight streets arranged in a grid. The Renaissance was a period of European art, architecture, and learning after the Middle Ages, when designers often valued order, proportion, and careful planning. In Valletta, this planning can still be felt beneath each quiet step. Streets run across the peninsula and down toward the water. Some are steep enough to have long stone stairways. Others lead past churches, palaces, offices, cafes, shops, and homes. This is one of Valletta's gentle lessons. It is both a historic city and a living capital. It is not only a place of monuments. People work here, shop here, study here, and return home through these same streets. A delivery van may pass beneath a carved balcony. A shopkeeper may sweep the pavement outside a building that has stood for centuries. Residents lean from windows above streets once walked by knights, sailors, merchants, artists, and officials. The past is present, but daily life continues around it. As the morning light grows, the details of the buildings become clearer. Many of the facades are made from Malta's pale limestone, which gives the city its golden color. Above the streets are enclosed wooden balconies called gallerigi. Some are painted deep green, others blue, red, or cream. They project outward from the upper floors, casting soft shadows on the stone below. From within them, a person could look down at the street while remaining shaded from the sun. Today they remain one of Valletta's most recognizable features, adding rhythm and character to the long, straight roads. The architecture of Valletta carries many styles, but Baroque is especially important. Baroque was an ornate style from the 17th and 18th centuries, often full of movement, decoration, and rich detail. In Valletta, Baroque churches and palaces appear along streets that are otherwise simple and regular. A plain wall may suddenly give way to a carved doorway, a grand staircase, or a church front filled with curves and columns. The city's beauty often comes from this balance: order and ornament, straight streets and softened stone, strong walls and delicate shadows. One of the most famous places in Valletta is St. John's Co-Cathedral. A co-cathedral is a church that shares cathedral status with another church. From the outside, St. John's can seem restrained, built into the strong fabric of the city. For now, on this slow morning walk, it is enough to pass near its walls and notice how the quiet street holds a place of great importance within the city. Not far away is the Grand Master's Palace, another important building from the time of the Knights. Grand Master was the title given to the leader of the Order of St. John. The palace has served many roles over time, reflecting Malta's changing history. Like much of Valletta, it speaks not in one single voice, but in layers: the period of the Knights, later colonial administration, and the modern Maltese state. Along the streets are also the old auberges. An auberge is a residence or lodging house. In Valletta, these auberges were used by different language groups of the Knights, who came from various parts of Europe. Each auberge had its own role in the life of the order. Today, some of these buildings have taken on new purposes, but their facades still add to the city's calm dignity. In 1980, Valletta was inscribed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It was recognized for its remarkable concentration of historic architecture and its planned fortified design. Yet the city's value is not found only in famous buildings. It is also in the way light moves across stone, in the narrow streets that hold cool shade, and in the harbor views appearing suddenly at the end of a lane. The walk continues slowly upward and outward, toward the upper Baracca Gardens. The sound of footsteps on the stone steps is gentle and even. Balconies lean over the street. Church bells drift softly above the rooftops. The air carries a little salt from the water below. At the gardens, the city opens. After the close streets and tall facades, the view spreads wide. Below, the grand harbor rests in the morning light, its water smooth and blue, its fortified edges glowing pale gold. Across the harbor, the older towns wait quietly on their own peninsulas and inlets. Valletta remains behind, still waking, still shining softly in the sun. Ahead, the harbor lies broad and calm, ready to lead the journey onward. Chapter 3: The Grand Harbor. From the straight streets of Valletta, the land begins to open toward water. A narrow road slopes gently between honey-colored buildings, and at the end of it, beyond the balconies and shutters, there is a bright stillness. The grand harbor appears in pieces at first, a strip of blue between walls, a pale reflection below a bastion, the slow movement of a small boat crossing from one side to the other. Then, as the view widens, the harbor gathers itself into a calm, spacious shape. The Grand Harbor is one of Malta's most important natural harbors. A natural harbor is a sheltered area of water where ships can anchor safely, protected from the open sea by the shape of the land. Here, in this long inlet between Valletta and the three cities, the water lies deep and guarded by limestone points, headlands, and fortified walls. It is easy to understand, standing above it, why this place has mattered for so many centuries. The Mediterranean has always been a sea of movement. Ships have carried grain, cloth, oil, timber, letters, passengers, and ideas across its waters. Malta, set near the center of that sea, became a place where routes could meet. The grand harbor, with its sheltered arms and deep water, offered a safe place to pause, repair, trade, or prepare for onward travel. The harbor has been used since ancient times. Long before the towers and bastions took their present forms, boats came and went along these shores. Later, under the Knights of St. John, the harbor became a center of defense and seafaring life. Still later, under the British, it remained important for naval activity, a word that simply means activity connected with ships and a navy. Yet in the quiet light, the harbor does not seem to hurry. The surface of the water holds the morning gently. Limestone walls rise from the edges in warm shades of cream and gold. Their reflections waver below them, lengthening and shortening as small ripples pass. A ferry moves without haste across the inlet, leaving a soft white line behind it. Farther away, the shape of a working boat rests close to the quay, and its ropes creak faintly against a mooring post. Across the water are the three cities, Birgu, also called Vittoriosa, Sanglia, and Cospicua. Their old waterfronts face Valletta as if in quiet conversation. Between them and the capital, the harbor has carried centuries of arrivals and departures. Around the grand harbor stand several fortifications. A fortification is a defensive structure, such as a wall, a tower, or a fort, built to protect a place. Malta's fortifications are among its most recognizable sights, and around this harbor they seem almost to grow from the stone itself. At the tip of Valletta stands Fort St. Elmo, watching the meeting place of the Grand Harbor and Marsumexit Harbor beyond the peninsula. Its pale walls face the open sea, where the horizon lies low and blue. Across the water, in Birgu, Fort St. Angelo rises close to the harbor's edge. It was an important stronghold of the Knights of St. John, especially before Valletta was built. Its position gives it a steady presence, as though it has long been accustomed to the sight of sails, oars, steamships, ferries, and modern vessels passing below. Near the harbor entrance stands Fort Ricasoli, another large defensive work, its walls turned toward the channel where ships enter from the sea. Named calmly like this, one after another, the forts become part of the harbor's outline: St. Elmo, St. Angelo, Ricasoli. Stone, water, and sky, the Grand Harbor has known difficult times as well as peaceful ones. During the Second World War, Malta's position in the Mediterranean made it strategically important, and the harbor area was heavily bombed. Many buildings were damaged, and many lives were changed. Today, this history is remembered with respect, while the harbor continues to serve the living city around it. The water, as it lies below the walls, seems to hold both memory and renewal. A bell sounds somewhere in Valletta, softened by distance. A gull crosses the air slowly, its call fading over the inlet. On the far side, sunlight touches a row of buildings near the waterfront, then slips down toward the water, where it breaks into small pieces of brightness. Today, the Grand Harbor is still active. Ferries move between shores, making daily crossings for residents and visitors. Cruise ships sometimes arrive, rising high above the quays. Working boats attend to practical tasks. Pleasure craft rest at their moorings or move gently through the calm water. The harbor is not a museum piece, but part of modern Malta's daily rhythm. And still, from a quiet viewpoint, it can feel deeply restful. The eye follows the harbor's curves from one inlet to another. It notices the steps leading down toward the water, the stone arches, the old warehouses, the masts drawing thin lines against the sky. It notices how the colors shift as the day changes. Pale blue in the morning, silver at noon, deeper blue in the evening, when the fort walls are mirrored in the surface below. There is a softness in the way sound travels here. A rope brushes wood. A ferry engine hums low and steady. Voices from the waterfront drift upward and become indistinct. Bells and gull calls mingle with the faint movement of water against stone. For a while, the harbor invites simple looking. No single moment contains all of its history. It has been a place of trade, defense, departure, return, labor, ceremony, and ordinary crossing. Its deep waters have reflected ancient ships, the vessels of the knights, British naval craft, fishing boats, ferries, and the lights of the present city. The same water gathers the shapes together. Valletta on one side, the three cities on the other. Forts at the entrance, quays, domes, balconies, walls, and small boats between them. As the light moves slowly across the harbor, the gaze drifts with it, away from the high streets of the capital and across the inlet toward the older towns opposite. Birgu, Sanglia, and Cospicua rest quietly along the water's edge, their narrow lanes waiting beyond the waterfront, where stone thresholds, painted doors, and shaded corners lead gently onward. Chapter 4: The Three Cities. Across the grand harbor from Valletta, the water gathers the light and carries it gently toward three old towns. They sit close together on the harbor's southern side, their walls and church domes rising from the same honey-colored stone that seems to belong so naturally to Malta. From a distance, the three cities appear almost joined, their narrow peninsulas reaching into the water, their fortifications folded around them like old protective arms. Their names can take a little time to settle in the mind because each city is known in more than one way. Birgu is also called Vittoriosa. Isla is also called Sanglia. Bormla is also called Cospicua. The older Maltese names are still often used in daily life, while the formal titles are linked to the time of the Knights of St. John, when these towns stood at the center of Malta's harbor world. We begin in Birgu, or Vittoriosa, walking slowly from the waterfront into the lanes behind it. Before Valletta was built, Birgu was the main base of the Knights. The Knights of St. John, also called the Knights Hospitaller, came to Malta in the 16th century, and from here they looked out over the grand harbor, watching ships arrive from across the Mediterranean. The leader of the Knights was called the Grand Master. This title meant that he was the head of the order, responsible for its military, religious, and administrative life. Under the Grand Masters, Birgu became a fortified town, with residences, churches, storehouses, and defenses gathered close to the water. At the edge of Birgu stands Fort St. Angelo, one of the most important landmarks of the harbor. Its pale walls rise from the tip of the peninsula, looking across to Valletta and out toward the harbor entrance. The fort played a major role during the Great Siege of 1565, when Malta's position in the Mediterranean brought the island into a difficult and defining moment. Here, we need not linger on the struggle itself. It is enough to know that after that time, Valletta was later founded across the harbor as a new fortified city. But in the evening calm, Birgu is not only a place of walls and history. It is also a town of doorways, balconies, steps, and small domestic details. The lanes turn gently between old buildings. Some are so narrow that the upper stories seem to lean companionably toward one another, making soft shade even before the sun has fully lowered. A polished stone threshold catches the last light. A painted door stands partly open to an inner hallway. Brass knockers rest against wood in the form of rings, hands, or small decorative faces. Beside a doorway, a clay pot holds a green plant or a small flower. Above, laundry moves lightly from a balcony, not as a decoration for visitors, but as part of ordinary life. This is one of the quiet pleasures of the three cities. They have an older feel than Valletta in many places, with streets that grew less from a strict plan and more from long habitation. Yet they are not frozen in the past. People live here, restore houses, open shops, go to church, prepare meals, walk dogs, and greet neighbors. The stone has carried many centuries, but the towns are still living communities. A short walk brings us into a small square. The sound of footsteps softens against the paving stones. A church facade rises nearby, its lines calm in the fading light. Malta has many churches, and in the three cities they often appear at the turn of a lane, their domes or bell towers visible above the rooftops. A bell may drift over the harbor now and then, not loudly, but as part of the evening air. From the square a lane narrows again. The walls are warm from the day, and the air holds a trace of salt. Then, quite suddenly, the street opens onto a promenade. A promenade is a walkway, often beside water, made for strolling. Here, the harbor returns to view, widening into silver and blue. Small boats rest along the edge. Their ropes make slight movements against mooring rings. Across the water, Valletta's bastions stand in a long golden line, and the windows of the city begin to reflect the lowering sun. From Birgu, we may continue toward Isla or Sanglia. Sanglia occupies a narrow peninsula with water on either side. The town feels close and intimate, shaped by its place between harbors. Streets run toward viewpoints where the sea appears unexpectedly, framed by stone walls and balcony rails. At the tip of Sanglia is a lookout garden, where the eye can travel slowly across the grand harbor. From here one can see Fort St. Angelo, Valletta, and the open spaces of water between them. The harbor does not feel like an empty distance. It feels like a shared courtyard of the sea, holding the three cities and Valletta together. The old name Isla is still heard and used, simple and familiar. Sanglia, the formal name, carries the memory of the knights. Both names belong to the place, just as Malta itself often holds several layers at once: an older word, a later title, a local custom, a restored building, a modern street lamp, a boat passing quietly below. Farther inland lies Bormla, or Cospicua. It is the largest of the three cities and sits behind Birgu and Sanglia, connecting them to the land beyond the harbor. Its formal title, Cospicua, is also linked to the era of the knights. Like the other two towns, it has known restoration, change, and daily use. Streets of old houses meet newer roads. Fortified lines and residential neighborhoods sit near one another. Around this wider area stand the Cottonera lines. These are large defensive walls built to protect the three cities. The word lines here means a long system of walls, bastions, and gates, rather than a single wall. They were meant to surround and strengthen the towns that face the harbor. In the soft pace of our walk, the Cottonera lines are less a military lesson than a reminder of how carefully Malta's harbor towns were guarded. Their stone shapes the edges of streets and viewpoints. A gate may appear ahead, broad and pale, with the road passing calmly through it. Beyond, life continues. A small car turning a corner, a balcony with plants, a shop closing for the evening, a person carrying bread home. The three cities are best understood slowly. They do not ask to be seen all at once. Birgu offers the nearness of Fort St. Angelo and the memory of the knights before Valletta. Sanglia offers narrow streets and open views from its peninsula. Cospicua offers a broader sense of the harbor towns joined to the land, held within old defensive lines. Together they form one of Malta's most layered harbor landscapes. Their walls have faced arrival and departure, ceremony and repair, silence and conversation. They have watched Valletta rise across the water, watched ships pass through the grand harbor, and watched evenings settle again and again on limestone, wood, rope, and sea. Now the light softens further. The harbor becomes a wide, calm mirror, broken only by the slow crossing of a boat. Windows glow along the waterfront. The stone lanes behind us grow cooler, and the potted plants near the doors become silhouettes in the gentle dusk. From the promenade, we take one last look across the water. Valletta rests on its peninsula. The three cities rest opposite, and between them, the grand harbor holds the evening in quiet balance. Soon our journey will turn inland, away from the salt air and the sound of moored boats. The road will rise toward Malta's old hilltop capital, where high walls, shaded lanes, and wide island views offer another kind of stillness. Chapter 5. Medina, the Silent City. In the middle of Malta, away from the harbors and the long blue edges of the sea, there is a city set high on a gentle rise of land. Its walls are pale and strong, made from the same warm limestone that gives so many Maltese towns their honey-colored glow. From a distance, Medina seems to rest quietly above the island, enclosed within its fortifications, looking out over fields, villages, church domes, and the soft haze of the Mediterranean horizon. Medina was once the capital of Malta. Long before Valletta was built beside the grand harbor, this inland city held a central place in Maltese life. Its position on high ground gave it wide views across the island, and its walls offered protection in earlier centuries when fortified towns were important places of safety and administration. Today, Medina is often called the Silent City. It is a gentle nickname, not a literal description at every hour, but it suits the feeling many visitors notice when they pass through its gates. Car traffic is limited within the walls, and the streets are narrow, shaded, and calm. Footsteps sound softly on smooth stone. Voices seem to lower themselves naturally. Even when other people are nearby, the city has a way of gathering sound and softening it. We approach slowly, over a bridge and toward the city gate. A gatehouse stands around the entrance, a structure built to frame and protect the passage into the city. The walls rise on either side, pale gold in the afternoon light. They have seen many centuries of change, yet they remain steady and simple in their presence. Beyond the gate, the streets begin to curve and narrow. Medina does not open like a broad modern avenue. It draws you inward, through lanes that bend gently between high limestone walls. The stone keeps the shade cool. Doorways appear in quiet succession, some plain, some grand, some decorated with carved details or polished knockers. The light falls in careful pieces, touching a step, a balcony, a corner of a wall, and then slipping away. The history of Medina reaches far back. In Roman times, the area was associated with the city of Melite, an important settlement on the island. Later, after the Arab period in Malta, the name Medina became linked with the Arabic word for a walled city, similar to the word Medina used in other places around the Mediterranean. This connection reminds us that Malta's history is layered, shaped by many languages, rulers, and communities. Those layers are not always visible all at once. They are held in place names, in street patterns, in foundations beneath later buildings, and in the quiet relationship between stone and memory. Roman, Arab, Norman, medieval, and later influences all help shape this place. No single period tells the whole story. Medina is more like a carefully folded cloth, with each fold carrying a trace of another time. The word medieval means relating to the Middle Ages, the long period of European history between ancient times and the early modern age. In Medina, the medieval feeling can be sensed in the intimate street plan, the enclosed spaces, and the way buildings seem to lean close to one another. Yet Medina's present appearance is not only medieval. It also includes Baroque architecture, a more ornate style from the 17th and 18th centuries, with graceful facades, decorative stonework, and a sense of measured elegance. Here and there, noble houses and palaces stand behind quiet walls. A noble house was the residence of an aristocratic family, one connected in earlier times with rank, land, or public office. In Medina, such houses remind us that the city was not only a fortress, it was also a place of governance, ceremony, family life, and social standing. Behind the large doors were courtyards, stairways, reception rooms, and shaded spaces where daily life unfolded away from the street. The lanes remain peaceful. The small courtyard may appear through an open doorway, with plants in pots and a little square of sky above. A shutter may be half closed against the sun. A lamp may be fixed to a wall, waiting for evening. The limestone, warmed through the day, begins to change color as the light lowers, moving from pale gold to a softer rose. Although Medina feels hushed, it is not a city outside of life. People still live and work here. Churches, museums, homes, and small businesses all belong to its present as much as to its past. The quiet atmosphere is part of its character, but not a sign that time has stopped. Like many historic places in Malta, Medina is both preserved and lived in, both old and continuing. Eventually, the narrow lanes lead toward the outer walls. From there, the view opens suddenly and gently. The island spreads below in soft layers, fields divided by low stone walls, towns gathered around church domes, roads curving between roofs and valleys, and farther away a faint blue line where the land gives itself back to the sea. Along the walls are bastions, defensive projections built out from the fortifications. A bastion allowed those who guarded the city to look outward and along the walls in earlier times. Now they offer places to stand quietly in the breeze. The air moves more freely here than in the enclosed lanes. It carries a hint of earth, limestone dust, distant gardens, and perhaps the faint sound of bells from beyond the walls. As the sun lowers, Medina becomes even softer. Shadows lengthen in the streets. The high walls hold the last light on their upper edges. Doorways darken. The city seems to breathe more slowly, as if every stone has absorbed the warmth of the day and is now releasing it into the evening air. We linger a little longer at the edge of the walls, looking out over Malta's countryside and towns. From this height, the island feels compact and deeply layered, with many centuries resting close together. The harbors of Valletta and the coast are not far away, yet here the mood is inland and sheltered. shaped by walls, gates, courtyards, and the quiet turning of lanes. When it is time to leave, we return slowly through the streets, past the softened doorways and the pale stone corridors. The city gate comes into view again, framing the outside world. We pass beneath it gently, leaving Medina's enclosed stillness behind. Just beyond the walls lies Rabat, whose name is also rooted in Arabic and means suburb or outskirts. Its streets are more open, more ordinary in their daily rhythm, yet beneath them and around them are more layers of Malta's past. From the hushed city of Medina, we step carefully into Rabat, where history continues below courtyards, churches, and quiet stone passages. Chapter 6. Rabat and the Layers Beneath. Just beyond the walls of Medina, where the quiet lanes of the old city give way to a broader pattern of streets and squares, lies Rabat. The two places rest close together, almost like neighboring pages in the same book. Medina rises within its fortified walls, enclosed and hushed, while Rabat spreads gently around it, more open, more everyday, and still deeply rooted in the past. The name Rabat comes from an Arabic word meaning a suburb or outskirts. It reminds us that this town grew beside the older walled city, close enough to share its history, yet distinct in its own life and rhythm. Here, the island's layers are not held only in grand gates or high bastions. They are found in courtyards, in church facades and shaded alleys, and in the stone beneath one's feet. A walk through Rabat begins in the present. A door opens onto a quiet street. A balcony casts a soft line of shade across pale limestone. Somewhere nearby, a small shop is arranging its morning goods, and the sound of voices drifts lightly through the air. Potted plants stand beside thresholds. Flowering plants may lean over a wall, adding color to the warm, honey-toned stone. The town is lived in, not set apart from time, and this gives its history a gentle continuity. Among Rabat's important sites is the Domus Romana. The word domus means house in Latin, and here it refers to the remains of a Roman townhouse. Long ago, when Malta was part of the Roman world, houses like this stood near the ancient city known as Melite. Today, what remains allows visitors to imagine the shape of domestic life. Rooms arranged around spaces of movement and rest, floors once carefully decorated, and traces of a household that belonged to another age. One of the most memorable features of the Domus Romana is its mosaics. A mosaic is a picture or pattern made from small pieces of stone, tile, or glass, fitted together with patient skill. In Rabat, the colors have softened with time, but their patterns still hold a quiet grace. They suggest not only decoration, but care, the human wish to make a place beautiful, to create order and rhythm beneath daily footsteps. Archaeology helps us understand these fragments. Archaeology is the study of past human life through objects, buildings, and remains. It works gently with what has endured: a broken vessel, a patterned floor, a wall foundation, a lamp, a coin, a carved stone. Each piece is small, yet together they form a wider picture. In a place like Rabat, archaeology does not feel distant. It feels close, because the modern town continues above and around these older traces. The deeper one looks, the more Rabat reveals. Beneath parts of the town are underground complexes known as catacombs. Catacombs are underground burial passages made up of corridors and chambers cut into the rock. Rabat is known especially for St. Paul's catacombs and St. Agatha's catacombs, both important early Christian sites. They are historical and archaeological places, shaped by the customs and beliefs of communities that lived many centuries ago. There is no need to imagine them as strange or unsettling. They can be understood instead as quiet stone passages, carefully made, bearing witness to how people honored memory and community. The air below is cooler than the streets above. The limestone softens sound. Steps become slower. Light falls gently where openings or lamps allow it, touching the pale surfaces and then fading into shade. Above, Rabat continues with church bells, footsteps, and the ordinary rhythm of the day. Below, time feels gathered and still. Malta has a strong tradition connecting the island with the shipwreck of St. Paul, described in the Acts of the Apostles in the New Testament. In Maltese tradition, the island called Melite in that account is identified with Malta, and this connection has been important to the island's Christian heritage for many centuries. Scholars sometimes discuss ancient geography with care because old place names and sea routes can be complex. Still, the tradition remains deeply woven into Rabat and into Malta's religious history. This is part of what gives Rabat its layered feeling. Roman remains, early Christian traditions, Arabic-influenced place names, medieval streets, later churches and convents, and modern daily life all share the same ground. A person may leave a museum of ancient mosaics, pass a church doorway, cross a sunlit square, and hear the faint movement of traffic beyond the old streets. Nothing needs to be separated too sharply. The past and present lie close together here, like stones in the same wall. Courtyards offer moments of stillness. Behind simple entrances, there may be shaded spaces with plants, worn steps, and walls that keep the heat of the day at a gentle distance. The Maltese limestone, used so often in buildings across the islands, gives these spaces their familiar glow. In the morning it may appear pale cream. By afternoon it deepens toward gold. In the evening it can hold a faint rose color before cooling into dusk. Rabat also has convents and churches, some modest, some ornate, each part of the town's long religious landscape. Their bells may drift through the streets, not loudly, but as a soft marking of time. A bell note rises, spreads over rooftops and fades. Then the town returns to its quieter sounds, a closing shutter, a bicycle passing, a low conversation near a doorway. After visiting the underground passages, the return to daylight feels gentle. Sunlight waits at the entrance, touching the stone steps. The air above seems warmer, carrying the scent of dust, flowers, and nearby cooking. The streets of Rabat continue as before, with everyday life moving calmly over the many layers below. And from these layers, Roman floors, early Christian passages, Arabic names, and living streets, the journey through Malta can drift still farther back in time. Beyond the written records, beyond the Roman town and the old traditions, there are stones even older, standing under open sky. They wait near the sea and on quiet hillsides, the prehistoric temples of Malta, shaped by hands from a world almost beyond memory. Chapter 7. Ancient Temples of Malta. Long before Valletta's bastions rose above the harbors, and long before Medina's quiet lanes took their present shape, people were already building in stone on the Maltese islands. Their world belonged to the Neolithic period, the later part of the Stone Age, when communities had begun to farm, keep animals, make pottery, and live in settled places. In Malta, from about 3,600 to 2,500 BCE, these communities created remarkable megalithic temples. The word megalithic simply means made with very large stones. And here among low hills, open fields, and the blue edge of the Mediterranean, the word feels especially fitting. Some of the stones are taller than a person. Some weigh many tons. They were set in place without metal tools, without modern machines, and without written records to explain exactly how or why the builders shaped them as they did. Yet they remain patient and pale beneath the sky. Malta's prehistoric temples are older than Stonehenge in England, and older than the Egyptian pyramids. They are among the oldest known freestanding stone monuments in the world. Freestanding means that they were built to stand on their own, not carved into a cliff or cut from a mountainside. Their age is one of the quiet wonders of the islands, a reminder that Malta's story reaches far deeper than its forts, churches, and walled cities. The temples are protected archaeological sites now. Archaeology is the study of past human life, through objects, buildings, and traces left behind. Visitors walk on marked paths and view the ancient stones with care, keeping a respectful distance. There is something peaceful in that distance. It allows the stones to remain themselves, not as objects to be handled, but as survivors of a very old human world. Several of Malta's megalithic temples are listed together by UNESCO as the megalithic temples of Malta. They include Gigantia on Gozo, Hagar Kim, and Menidra near Malta's southern coast, Tarxian, Tahagrat, and Skorba. Each site has its own character, its own arrangement of walls and rooms, its own way of sitting in the landscape. We begin near the southern coast, where Hagar Kim stands on a ridge above the sea. The place seems to belong to both land and sky. Around it are low shrubs, patches of dry earth, and the soft movement of wind over the open ground. Beyond the temple, the Mediterranean spreads outward in layers of blue. On a clear day, the small islet of Filfla can be seen offshore, a quiet shape resting on the horizon. At Hagar Keem, the stones are warm in the sun, their surfaces softened by time. Some are upright slabs, others form walls and passageways. There are doorways made from carefully placed stone blocks, and spaces that curve inward, like sheltered rooms. Many Maltese temple layouts include rounded rooms or recesses called apses, often semicircular, opening from a central area. Moving through the plan of a temple, even only with the eyes, one may notice how these curved spaces gather around a middle line, like petals around a stem. Not far away, lower on the slope toward the sea, lies Menidra. The walk between Hagar Keem and Menidra is gentle and open, with the sound of the coast carried faintly by the wind. Menidra is often discussed in relation to the sun. Researchers have observed that parts of the temple seem to connect with the movement of sunlight at certain times of year, especially around equinoxes and solstices. An equinox is when day and night are nearly equal. A solstice marks the longest or shortest day of the year. It is best to speak carefully here. We do not know exactly what the builders believed, or precisely how they understood the sky. But the way light enters certain spaces at certain seasons suggests that the path of the sun may have mattered to them. At dawn, in those measured moments of the year, sunlight can touch the old stone in ways that feel deliberate. The effect is quiet, almost like a conversation between architecture and morning. Archaeologists have found evidence that these temples were used for ritual purposes. A ritual is a repeated action with meaning, often connected to belief, community, or ceremony. At different temple sites, researchers have found altars, decorated stones, figurines, pottery, and traces of special activities, yet the exact meanings remain unknown. No written language from these builders has survived to explain their thoughts. The stones offer clues, but not complete answers. There is a calm dignity in not knowing. The silence of the temples is not empty, it is full of patience. Across the water, on Gozo, stands Gantija, one of the most monumental of the temple sites. Its name is linked with the Maltese word for giant, and when one sees the size of its stone blocks, the name is understandable. The walls are thick and impressive, built from great limestone slabs fitted together with remarkable skill. Gantija is especially ancient, among the earliest of the Maltese temple complexes, and it looks out over the landscape near Jagra, where fields and houses spread gently around it. Like the temples on Malta, Gantija has curved internal spaces arranged around central areas. Its stones speak of organized labor, shared knowledge, and a community able to imagine something lasting. To move such blocks, to plan such shakes, and to maintain such a place over generations must have required cooperation. The temple builders were not simply placing stones, they were shaping a shared world. Other sites add further layers to the story. Tarxian is known for decorated stonework. Tahagra and Scorba, in the northwest of Malta, help archaeologists understand earlier phases of settlement and building. Each site is part of a wider picture, and the picture remains gently incomplete. The materials were close at hand. Malta's limestone, pale and workable, has shaped the islands for thousands of years. Later people would use it for houses, walls, churches, and fortifications. But here, in the temple period, it became something older and more mysterious, a way to mark place, time, and meaning beneath the Mediterranean sky. As the afternoon light shifts, shadows move slowly along the stones, a doorway darkens, a curved wall glows, the wind passes over grasses and low plants, then moves on toward the cliffs. Nothing hurries here. The temples have already waited through thousands of summers and winters, through changes of language, faith, and settlement, through the rise and fall of cities not yet imagined when these stones were raised. To stand near them is to feel Malta's depth. The island is small in size, but its past is wide. Beneath its modern roads and lively towns, beneath its harbor walls and village bells, there is this older layer of sunlit stone and unanswered questions. And from the temples the path turns naturally toward the southern coast. The same limestone that formed these ancient blocks continues outward into cliffs and caves. The air grows a little cooler with the nearness of the sea. Ahead, the land opens toward clear water, where sunlight moves across the waves, and in quiet grottos along the shore, turns the sea a deep and luminous blue. Chapter 8. Blue Grotto and the Southern Coast. From the ancient stones near Malta's southern shore, the land opens toward the sea. The path seems to widen in the mind, leaving behind the enclosed temple spaces and moving into air, brightness, and distance. Here, along the southern coast, Malta shows another part of its character: high limestone cliffs, rocky ledges, small valleys leading down to the water, and the steady blue of the Mediterranean stretching far beyond the island's edge. The stone is pale in the morning light. In some places it looks almost white. In others it holds a warmer color, like cream or soft gold. This limestone has shaped much of Malta's landscape and architecture. It is a sedimentary rock, formed long ago from layers of marine material, pressed and changed over time. The same kind of stone that gives towns their honey-colored walls also forms cliffs, caves, and coastlines, meeting the sea in quiet, weathered shapes. Near Oued Izurike, on this southern coast, lies one of Malta's best-known natural places, the Blue Grotto. A grotto is a small cave, especially one near water. The Blue Grotto is not just one cave, but a group of sea caves carved into the limestone along the shore. From above, the water looks deep and clear, moving gently at the base of the cliffs. From below, in a small boat, the caves appear as shaded openings in the rock, inviting the eye into coolness and blue light. On a calm morning when sea conditions allow, small boats may carry visitors out from the little harbor. The boat rocks softly as it leaves the shore. The movement is slow and simple, forward over clear water, then a slight rise, then a gentle settling again. The cliff face passes nearby, marked by ledges, hollows, and pale lines where wind and water have worked over the stone. These boat trips depend on the weather. If the sea is too rough, or the wind is not favorable, they do not run. The coast is respected on its own terms. Some days belong to the boats, and some days belong only to the waves, the birds, and the open water. In the quiet of an off-season morning, or at an hour before the day grows busy, the Blue Grotto can feel spacious and calm. The boatman guides the small craft toward the caves, and the sunlight begins to do its gentle work. The blue for which the grotto is known comes from light passing through the seawater and reflecting upward onto the cave walls. The sea acts almost like a mirror, and almost like glass, filtering the sunlight into deep, luminous color. Inside the cave, the air is cooler. The sound changes. Outside, there is open sky and the broad surface of the Mediterranean. Inside, there is shade, stone, and the soft rhythm of water touching rock. Blue light trembles across the walls, shifting with each small movement of the sea. It does not stay still, but it does not hurry. It glows, fades, gathers, and glows again. The water below may appear sapphire, turquoise, or a clear shining blue, depending on the angle of the sun and the depth beneath. Small ripples make patterns that travel over the cave ceiling and walls. The stone seems to hold the color for a moment, then release it back into the water. This coast has been shaped by erosion. Erosion means the wearing away of rock by water, wind, or weather. Along Malta's shores, the sea has worked patiently against the limestone for a very long time. Waves enter cracks. Salt and wind touch the stone. Rainwater follows small weaknesses in the rock. Slowly, over years beyond easy counting, caves form, ledges break, cliffs recede, and the coastline takes on its present shape. There is something restful in imagining such slow change. The cliff does not transform in a day. The cave is not made in a season. It is the result of many small actions repeated over time. Water rising and falling, wind moving over the surface, light warming the rock, evening cooling it again. Beyond the caves, the southern coast continues in long, pale lines. High cliffs stand above the sea, their edges softened by distance. Low shrubs and hardy plants grow where they can, holding to thin soil between stones. The landscape can seem dry in summer, with warm colors and open sky. In winter and spring, more green may appear across the fields and valleys. From certain viewpoints near the cliffs, the eye may find Filfla resting low on the horizon. Filfla is an islet south of Malta. An islet is a very small island. From the mainland coast, it appears as a small, dark shape in the blue, separate and still. It is uninhabited and protected as a nature reserve. A nature reserve is an area set aside to protect wildlife and habitat. Because Filfla is protected, landing there is generally prohibited. It remains a place mostly for seabirds, plants, and the surrounding sea. Seen from a distance, Filfla adds a quiet point to the view. It does not draw the journey away from Malta, but it gives the horizon a marker, a small resting shape between water and sky. The sea around it shifts in color as clouds pass or sunlight changes, and the islet remains low and calm. Bakmir Weed is Zurich. The small harbor lies tucked beneath the land. Boats return one by one when the morning's trips are done. Ropes are gathered, footsteps move along the quay, salt spray dries lightly on the skin. The cliffs rise above, keeping their pale silence. The Blue Grotto is famous, and at times it welcomes many visitors. Yet its beauty is not only in the number of people who come to see it. It is in the meeting of simple things: limestone and sunlight, clear water and shaded rock, the patient work of waves, and the brief blue reflections that appear and disappear with the sea. Leaving the caves, the coastline continues eastward in the imagination. The cliffs begin to give way, gradually, to lower shores and more sheltered waters. The open blue remains close, but the mood changes from cliff and cave to harbor and village. Ahead lies Marsaxloch, where painted fishing boats rest in the morning light, and nets lie in soft heaps near the water. The southern coast carries us there gently, following the curve of Malta toward a quieter harbor, bright with color and held by the sea. Chapter 9: Fishing Villages and Marsaxloch. On Malta's southeastern coast, where the land curves gently around sheltered water, there is a village whose name seems to carry the sea inside it. Marsaxloch, often pronounced Marsaxloch, rests beside a wide, rounded harbor with low buildings facing the water and boats gathered close to the shore. A harbor is a protected place where boats can anchor, away from the full force of the open sea. Here the water is usually calmer than beyond the headlands, and in the early part of the day, it may hold the colors of the village like a quiet mirror. Pale stone, painted wood, folded awnings, and strips of sky all appear softly on the surface, moving only when a small ripple passes through. The name Marsaxloch is often explained in two parts. The first, Marsa, is linked with the idea of a harbor. The second, Schloch, refers to a southeast wind. So the name can be understood, gently and simply, as a harbor of the southeast wind. Place names in Malta often carry traces of older languages and older ways of describing the land, and this one seems especially fitting for a village shaped by weather, boats, and the direction of the sea breeze. At a quiet morning hour, before the day has fully gathered itself, Marsaxloch's waterfront has a domestic, unhurried feeling. Market stalls may be opening beneath awnings that stir lightly in the air. A few voices pass between neighbors and workers. Ropes lie coiled on the quay, nets rest in soft heaps, some drying in the sun, some waiting to be mended or folded back into boats. The village is especially known for its traditional Maltese fishing boats, called luzus. A luzu is a traditional Maltese fishing boat, often painted in bright colors. Blue, yellow, red, and green are common, and the paint gives the harbor a cheerful brightness without needing any noise or rush. The boats rock gently in place, their reflections stretching and gathering in the water below them. Many luzus have painted eyes on the bow. The bow is the front of a boat, the part that first faces the water ahead. These eyes are often linked with protective traditions, and people commonly associate them with ancient symbols, such as the Eye of Osiris or the Eye of Horus. The exact origins and meanings may vary, and over time symbols can gather more than one explanation. Still, the effect is gentle and memorable, boat after boat looking outward over the harbor, as if keeping a quiet watch on the sea. The luzus are practical working vessels, not only beautiful objects. Their shape, color, and decoration belong to a living fishing tradition, though that tradition has changed with modern life, as all working traditions do. Marsaxloch is not a village outside of time. It receives many visitors, and the surrounding area includes modern port and energy infrastructure. Yet fishing remains part of its local identity, visible in the boats, the nets, the market, and the rhythm of activity along the waterfront. On Sundays, Marsaxloch is especially well known for its fish market. At that time, stalls may line the promenade, and the harbor becomes busier with residents, visitors, and sellers arranging the morning's catch. A promenade is a walkway, often beside the water, made for strolling. In a quieter hour, one can imagine the same promenade with just a few footsteps moving over the stone, awnings shifting softly above tables, and the scent of salt, rope, and fresh fish passing briefly through the air. Along the waterfront, restaurants and small cafes face the harbor. Their tables look out toward the boats, and behind them the village rises modestly from the shore. The scene is bright, but not hurried. A chair is set in place, a shutter opens, someone carries a crate carefully along the quay. The water taps lightly against the sides of moored boats, and the painted hulls answer with slow, small movements. The colors of the Luzus are part of what makes Marsac's lock so recognizable. A red stripe may meet a yellow one. A blue hull may reflect in greenish water. A narrow line of white paint may catch the sun. Each boat is individual, but together they create a pattern, like a floating village within the village itself. The painted eyes at the bows appear and disappear as the boats turn slightly with the water. Fishing life here, as in many coastal places, is both ordinary and skilled. It asks for knowledge of seasons, winds, tools, and changing conditions at sea. It is easy for visitors to notice the picturesque details, the colors, the nets, the soft movement of boats. But beneath those details is work, memory, and adaptation. The harbor carries both the beauty of tradition and the practical needs of the present. A little farther out, the bay opens toward the wider Mediterranean. The morning light spreads across the water in silver patches. Gulls may pass overhead, their calls softened by distance. The village behind remains close enough to hear in fragments, low conversation, a market pole being adjusted, a rope drawn over stone. Nothing needs to be hurried. The harbor holds each sound gently, as if allowing it to settle. As the sun rises higher, the limestone buildings begin to warm. Malta's familiar honey-colored stone appears again, this time beside bright painted wood and seawater. The same island material that shapes Valletta's walls, Medina's lanes, and the farmhouses of the countryside is here too, meeting the harbor edge. Stone, sea, and human craft come together in a simple, everyday way. For a while, it is enough just to remain beside the water and watch the boats. One Luzu turns slightly, and its reflection becomes a wavering ribbon of blue. Another rests with its bow toward the quay, painted eyes bright beneath the morning. Nets lie quiet in the sun. A market awning lifts and falls with the breeze. The village breathes at the pace of the harbor. Then slowly the journey begins to turn northward. Marsac's lock stays behind, on its sheltered southeastern coast, with its boats, its working waterfront, and its colors floating on calm water. The road leads back across Malta, past stone walls and towns, toward the far northern shore. There, at Circola, ferries cross the channel to Gozo, carrying people and vehicles over open blue water. And as the harbor of Marsac's lock softens into memory, the painted Luzus remain like small bright marks upon the morning, red, yellow, green, and blue, rocking gently beneath the Maltese sky. Chapter 10. Gozo, the quieter sister island. The crossing to Gozo begins at Circua, near the northern edge of Malta, where the land narrows toward the channel and the sea opens in a soft band of blue. Here the ferry waits with a patient steadiness. A ferry is simply a boat that carries people, and often cars as well, across a stretch of water. In Malta, this crossing is part of ordinary life, a familiar journey between islands. Slowly the boat moves away from the harbor. Behind it, the wake spreads in pale, widening lines, smoothing itself into the surrounding sea. Malta rests low behind us, its limestone shore fading gently in the brightness. Ahead, across the channel, Gozo appears. Gozo is Malta's second largest island. In Maltese it is called Gaudix, a name with a rounded, quiet sound. It lies northwest of the main island of Malta, close enough to reach by ferry, yet distinct in feeling. The ferry arrives at Mgar, Gozo's harbor, where boats rest beneath pale cliffs and roads begin to climb inland. Gozo is often described as quieter than Malta, and in many areas this is true. There are more open fields, smaller settlements, and stretches of rural road bordered by stone walls. But it is not isolated, and not untouched. It is a living island with schools, shops, homes, visitors, farms, churches, traffic, and everyday routines. Its calm comes not from being separate from the present, but from the way space opens around its villages, and from the softness of its agricultural landscape. Leaving Mgar, the road passes between low limestone walls. Fields lie in careful shapes on either side, some green in the cooler months, some golden and dry beneath summer light. In places the land is arranged in terraces. Terraced fields are stepped fields built on slopes, so that farmers can make use of uneven ground. From a distance, they look like wide, gentle stairs following the curve of the hills. Stone farmhouses stand among these fields, their walls the same warm color as the earth and villages around them. Many have simple courtyards, shaded doorways, and small windows set deep into thick limestone. The island's architecture feels close to the land, shaped by the materials nearby and by long habits of building in sun and wind. At the center of Gozo is Victoria, the island's capital. It is also known locally as Rabat, though this is not the same Rabat that lies beside Mdina on the island of Malta. Here in Gozo, Rabat is another name for Victoria, and the town gathers around streets, shops, churches, and the high walls of the Citadella. The Citadella, sometimes called the Citadel, rises on a hill above Victoria. A citadel is a fortified area, often built on high ground, where people could gather for protection. The hill has a long history of occupation, with layers from different periods resting beneath and within the present walls. Its current fortifications were largely strengthened during the time of the Knights of St. John, especially after an Ottoman raid on Gozo in 1551. That event belongs to a difficult chapter in the island's past, but here we hold it lightly, as part of the reason the walls were made stronger and as one thread in Gozo's long story. Walking within the Citadella, the sound of the town becomes softer. Stone lanes curve between old buildings. Doorways open into quiet courtyards. From the ramparts, the fortified walls around the edge, the island spreads outward in every direction. Victoria lies below, and beyond it are fields, village domes, low hills, and the distant blue edge of the sea. Gozo's villages seem to rest around their churches and squares. In the late afternoon, bells may drift from a church tower, carrying gently over roofs and narrow streets. A small square might hold a few benches, a cafe with chairs set in the shade, and windows with shutters half open to the air. Life moves at an ordinary pace, someone crossing the square with groceries, a door closing softly, the warm stone slowly releasing the heat of the day. Gozo is also known for traditional crafts, including lace making. Lace making is the creation of patterned fabric from fine threads, often worked carefully by hand. In Gozo, it has been practiced and preserved by artisans, and it remains part of the island's cultural heritage. Fine threads are crossed, twisted, and pinned into delicate designs, forming patterns that seem almost as light as sea foam or the shadow of leaves on stone. Not far from the village of Chagra stands one of the great ancient places of the Maltese islands, Gentija. These megalithic temples belong to Malta's prehistoric past and are among the oldest known freestanding stone monuments in the world. On Gozo, they stand in quiet dignity, made from large stone blocks set in shapes that have lasted for thousands of years. The exact beliefs of the people who built them are not fully known, but the stones remain, sunlit and patient, holding the memory of very early communities. The road across Gozo continues through fields and villages, toward the coast. The shoreline changes from place to place. There are bays with clear water, rocky ledges, cliffs, and small swimming areas where the sea gathers in sheltered blue. At Duedra, the coast is known for rock and sea formations. The famous Azure Window once stood there, a natural limestone arch, but it collapsed in 2017. Today, the coastline remains beautiful in another way, with open water, weathered stone, and waves moving around the rocks. Near Shwaini on Gozo's northern coast, the salt pans lie in pale geometric patterns beside the sea. Salt pans are shallow basins where seawater is allowed to evaporate, leaving salt behind. In calm weather, they hold thin mirrors of sky. Some reflect blue, some silver, some the soft pink of evening clouds. Around them, the rock is sun-worn and textured, and the sea moves steadily nearby. As the day leans toward evening, Gozo's rural quiet deepens. Light rests on terraced fields and low walls. The limestone turns from gold to a warmer rose. Village squares settle into dusk, and the roads between them grow softer in color. From a hilltop, the island seems compact and complete, with its churches, farmhouses, cliffs, fields, and sea, all held within one gentle view. Soon the journey will turn back toward the channel between the islands. Beyond Gozo's harbor, the water lies open again, calm and bright in the fading light. Between Gozo and Malta rests small Camino, a low island of pale rock, wild herbs, and turquoise shallows, waiting quietly in the middle of the sea. Chapter 11: Camino and the Blue Lagoon. Between Malta and Gozo, where the channel narrows and the sea gathers into bands of blue, there is a small island called Camino. In Maltese it is called Camuna. The name is often linked with cumin, though the older story of the name is best held lightly, like a scent carried on warm air. Camino is very small, about 3.5 square kilometers, a quiet piece of land set between its larger neighbors. From the water it appears low and pale, with rocky edges and gentle slopes. There are no large towns here, no busy inland streets, and only very limited development. Camino has had very few permanent residents, and much of its character comes from open rock, scrubland, coves, and sea. The boat moves slowly toward it. The wake spreads behind in a soft white line. Malta rests to one side, Gozo to the other, and Camino lies ahead like a pause between them. The island does not ask for much attention at first. It simply rises from the water, sunlit and spare, with paths crossing the stone and low plants growing close to the ground. This kind of landscape is called garrigue. Garrigue is low Mediterranean scrubland, made of hardy shrubs and herbs that can live with little soil and long dry summers. The plants are often small, but they are strong. Some have silver leaves, some have tiny flowers, some release a quiet fragrance when the day is warm. Here the air may carry the faint scent of wild herbs, salt, dry grass, and sun-warmed stone. A narrow path leads over the rock. It is not a grand road, only a simple way across the island, between patches of scrub and open limestone. The ground is uneven in places, but the view is wide. Above, seabirds cross the sky, moving from one stretch of water to another. Below, the coast folds into small coves. A cove is a small sheltered bay, a place where the sea enters the land gently. Around Camino, these little indentations hold water in shades of blue, green, and clear glass. The waves touch the stone with a soft, repeated sound, then draw back again. The most famous place on the island is the Blue Lagoon. The Blue Lagoon lies between Camino and the small islet of Cominato. A lagoon is a shallow, sheltered area of seawater, often calmer than the open sea around it. Here, when the light is right and the weather is kind, the water becomes a luminous turquoise. It is clear and bright, with pale shallows and soft shadows moving beneath the surface. In summer, this place can be very busy. Many people come to see the color of the water, to swim, to float, and to spend bright hours under the sun. But we arrive in a quieter moment, perhaps early in the day or outside the busiest season, when there is more space between sounds. The boat slows, the water changes color beneath it. Deep blue becomes bright blue, and bright blue becomes a clear, soft turquoise. Small ripples pass over it, making patterns that move and disappear, then return in another shape. Near the shore, the water is shallow. It slides over pale sand and smooth rock. The edge of the island is simple here: stone, scrub, and sky. The beauty is not complicated. It is made of water, light, and shelter. A few boats rest at anchor. Their ropes dip into the sea. A gull passes overhead, then turns toward the open channel. The sound of voices, if there are any, stays far away and low. The main sound is the water itself, folding gently against the side of the boat, touching the rocks, moving in small circles around the shallows. Beyond the lagoon, Camino remains spare and sunlit. There are rocky paths across the island, small coves along the coast, and low cliffs where the land meets the sea more sharply. In places, the limestone drops toward clear water below. In other places, it slopes softly, as if the island is leaning down to meet the waves. Camino is also important for wildlife. Parts of the island and its surrounding waters are included in protected conservation areas. A conservation area is land or sea set aside to help protect nature, including plants, animals, and habitats. On an island as small as this one, such protection matters. The low shrubs, the seabirds, the shoreline, and the clear coastal waters all form part of a delicate pattern. The island may look simple, but it is alive in quiet ways. Wind moves through dry stems with a sound almost too soft to name. The plants hold close to the earth, shaped by sun and salt and sea air. Birds move between the island and the open water, crossing the sky in patient lines. On a higher part of the island stands St. Mary's Tower. It was built in the early 17th century, during the rule of the Knights of St. John. From a distance it appears calm and solid, a square stone tower watching over the channel between Malta and Gozo. It belongs to a time when these waters were carefully observed, when islands, harbors, and sea routes were part of a wide Mediterranean world. Here, we do not need to linger over the details of defense. It is enough to see the tower in the soft light, still and pale against the sky. Its stone has weathered many seasons. Around it, the island remains open, with sea on every side. The path continues. There is no hurry. The sun rests on the limestone. The herbs release their dry, clean scent. The water below keeps changing color as clouds pass and the angle of light shifts. Turquoise becomes blue, then silver, then blue again. Camino feels like a resting note in the larger song of Malta. Valletta had its streets and bastions. Medina had its high, quiet walls. Gozo had terraced fields, salt pans, and village bells. Here there is mostly openness. Rock, scrub, coves, tower, bird, sea. The island is small enough to be held in the mind all at once. To the north, Gozo waits in warm light. To the south, Malta stretches low across the water. Between them, Camino rests in the channel, neither far from the larger islands, nor quite like either one. At the blue lagoon, the shallow water brightens once more. Light moves across the sand below in slow patterns. The boat turns gently, making a small curve through the clear sea. The islet of Caminado lies nearby, low and quiet, helping to shelter the lagoon from the wider movement of the channel. For a little while, everything becomes simple. The sea breathes against the rocks. The sky opens above the island. The tower stands in the distance. A bird crosses from one blue space into another. Then the light begins to soften. The bright color of the lagoon grows calmer, less dazzling, more transparent. The edges of the island turn golden, shadows lengthen along the paths, and the low plants become small dark shapes against the stone. The boat leaves the shelter of the lagoon and moves back into the open water between the islands. Behind us, Camino grows smaller, its coves and cliffs slowly blending into one pale outline. Ahead, Malta waits in the evening light, its limestone walls cooling gently after the day. The wake opens softly behind the boat. The channel widens, and the journey turns, very gradually, back toward the larger island, as dusk begins to gather over the Mediterranean. Chapter 12. Evening Return to Malta. By the time we return toward Malta, the day has softened at its edges. The sea, so bright at noon, has begun to gather the colors of evening. Blue deepens into indigo. Silver paths appear where the last light rests on the water. The islands rise gently from the Mediterranean, their pale limestone, no longer golden and sunlit, but rose-colored, then lavender, then a quiet gray-blue. Malta is a small country, compact enough that many centuries can seem to rest close together. A short journey may lead from a prehistoric temple to a Baroque street, from a Roman mosaic to a fishing harbor, from a fortified city to a field bordered by dry stone walls. Here, distance is often brief, but time feels wide. The sea has always been part of Malta's story. The islands lie in the central Mediterranean, between Sicily and the North African coast, along routes that carried traders, sailors, pilgrims, soldiers, and travelers. Many peoples left traces here: temple builders, Phoenicians, Carthaginians, Romans, Byzantines, Arabs, Normans, the Knights of St. John, the French, the British, and modern Maltese communities shaping their own independent country. Malta became independent in 1964, a republic in 1974, and later joined the European Union in 2004. Yet these facts rest lightly now like stones in a wall, each one part of a larger pattern. Ahead, Valletta begins to glow. The capital stands on its peninsula between harbors, its bastions holding the last warmth of the day. Lights appear one by one along the streets and waterfronts. The straight roads planned after the Great Siege of 1565 slope down toward the water. Wooden balconies darken into delicate outlines above narrow lanes. Church domes and towers are touched for a moment by the fading sky. Across the grand harbor, the three cities answer with their own small lights. Birgu, Senglia, and Cospicua rest along the inlets and quays. Fort St. Angelo, once watchful over the harbor, is now a dark shape against the water. The harbor itself is calm in the evening. Ferries move slowly, ropes shift against mooring posts, reflections lengthen and tremble, then settle again. This harbor has known trade and ceremony, work and waiting, arrivals and departures. It has also known difficult times, including the heavy strain of war. But tonight, from a distance, it offers a quieter image: limestone walls mirrored in darkening water, boats held safely in sheltered inlets, and the soft murmur of the sea moving through the harbor mouth. Inland, Medina grows still behind its high walls. The silent city, as it is often called, keeps its shaded lanes and noble houses in the cooling air. Its history reaches back through medieval streets to older Roman roots, and before that to earlier lives on the same high ground. From its bastions, the view over Malta fades gently. Fields, towns, church domes, and roads blend into the evening haze. Nearby, Rabat settles too. Beneath its streets lie older layers, Roman remains, early Christian traditions, and quiet stone passages studied by archaeologists who read the past through buildings, objects, and traces left behind. Above ground, courtyards gather shadow. Plants rest against walls. A doorway closes softly. The present continues over the past, not covering it completely, but living with it. Farther south, the ancient temples stand beneath the open sky. Hajar Kim and Manadra look toward the sea, their great stones arranged by people who lived thousands of years ago. On Gozo, Gigantia holds its own deep silence. These megalithic temples, built with very large stones, are among the oldest known freestanding stone monuments in the world. Their exact meanings remain unknown, and perhaps that is part of their quiet power. In the evening imagination, they need no explanation. They rest under the first stars, protected, weathered, and patient. Along the southeastern coast, Marsaxlokk grows calm after the activity of the day. The Lusus, the traditional Maltese fishing boats, rock gently in the harbor. Their painted colors are dimmer now, blue and yellow and red, softened by dusk. The eyes painted on their bows face the water, connected with old protective traditions whose meanings have shifted and endured. Nets lie in careful heaps. Market awnings are folded away. The smell of salt and rope lingers in the air. Across the channel, Gozo rests in a slower rhythm. Its terraced fields hold the last light a little longer. Stone farmhouses turn warm, then pale, then shadowed. In Victoria, the Cittadella stands on its hill, the old fortified heart of the island, watching over rooftops and lanes. Near the coast, salt pans hold shallow mirrors of the dimming sky. Village bells drift for a moment, then fade into the open air. Between Malta and Gozo, Camino becomes a low, dark shape on the water. The blue lagoon, so bright in daylight, turns quiet and glassy in memory. Its turquoise shallows are now only a soft brightness held in the mind. The island's rocky paths, wild herbs, coves, and sparse scrubland settle beneath the evening. Seabirds cross the sky in simple lines, then disappear toward the horizon. All these places remain close together: Valletta and its harbors, Medina and Rabat, the temples and cliffs, Marsaxlokk and Gozo, Camino and the Blue Lagoon. Malta's landscape is small, but it gathers many layers. It is not only a memory of the past, and not only a place of stone walls and old gates. It is a living country, with homes, schools, shops, roads, boats, voices, and ordinary days. History is present here, but so is daily life. Now the details begin to soften. Stone, sea, sky. The limestone walls cool in the night air. The harbors grow quieter. A few boats rock in place, held by their ropes, their reflections wavering gently below them. Valletta's lights stretch across the dark water in long golden lines. A bell sounds somewhere beyond the rooftops, then fades. The Mediterranean moves softly around the islands. It touches cliffs, slips into coves, and breathes against harbor steps. The waves are small tonight, only a low and steady motion, circling Malta, Gozo, and Camino beneath the calm sky. The last color leaves the stone. The sea and sky draw closer together, and the islands rest in the darkness, warm from the day, quiet under the stars, held gently in the wide Mediterranean night.